Yes, hello to everyone. I welcome you all to this new daily news digest session. Today is 29th of January, and I have a couple of articles from the Indian Express and the Hindu. I'm sharing the first article, which is from the Indian Express. It's a very important article because this is a major report which is published every single year. Its name is ASER 2024. Reading math skills improved across states. What explains this gain? So, what is this ASER report? It is based on a rural household survey conducted by NGO Pratham with 6,49,491 children across 605 rural districts. The latest annual survey of education report, that is ASER, comes bearing some rare good news. That is an improvement in learning levels across states, led largely by government schools. For instance, the report says the number of class 3 children who can read a class 2 textbook in government schools stands up at 23.4%, which is up from 16.3% in 2022. The year children came back to school after the pandemic years and the resultant shutdowns that led to big learning losses. Across government and private schools, basic arithmetic levels have improved from the pre pandemic year of 2018. That is, from 28.1% class 3 students who could at least do a simple subtraction sum that year to 33.7% now. The report also points out that while almost all states, that is, barring Jammu and Kashmir and Nagaland, have shown a recovery in learning levels of class 3 students when compared to 2022 states such as Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra, Odisha, and Uttar Pradesh showed a 10 percentage point increase in reading levels in 2024 when compared to 2022. Other states have also seen big gains when compared to 2018. Bihar saw a jump of almost 8 percentage points in class 3 reading levels to 20.1% in 2024, while Uttarakhand recorded a sharp rise, that is from 24.7% to 35.6% in 2024. These numbers can be remembered by you all because when you write answers in mains, you can be expected to quote these numbers. Bihar also saw improvement in class 3 arithmetic from 18% to 28.2%. But the surprise leader of this pack are the government schools of Uttar Pradesh, where reading levels went up 15 percentage points, that is from 12.3% in 2018 to 27.9%. Overall, across the government and private schools, reading levels went up from 28.3% to 34.4%. The state's basic arithmetic levels too went up from 26.9 to 40%. This shows that Uttar Pradesh has made significant progress. While there have been improvements in learning levels across age categories, the gains are the highest in the primary sections, which is the focus of learning initiatives of state government and union education ministries. Nipun Bharat Mission. This mission has to be remembered by you all. Nipun Bharat Mission, which focuses on foundational literacy and numeracy. While there is still a long way to go in terms of learning levels, the fact that 30% children across ages can't read a class 2 textbook is a dismal pointer. The gains are significant considering the slump of 2022 when children came back to school that year after 2 years of the pandemic. Almost all states recorded big drops in learning levels, with questions raised about the long term impact of the slump with the decline. Now, let's try and understand what led to these gains. Please understand that these gains basically were a result of the sudden improvement in learning levels, and most signs point to the new National Education Policy 2020 and its focus on foundational skills. While ASER and other surveys, including the government's own National Achievement Survey, have for years pointed to the challenge of poor learning levels across the country, despite rising enrollment levels aided by the right to education. It was with the new education policy that the government for the first time identified foundational literacy as the key learning area. According to the new education policy 2020, the highest priority of the education system will be to achieve universal foundational literacy and numeracy in primary schools by 2025. Okay, new universal foundational literacy and numeracy. These terms should be remembered by you. While ASER has for years been pointing to poor learning levels in the foundational years, it was with national education policy that the government threw in its lot, focusing on curriculum change, teacher training, etc. States also put their mind and money into the whole idea. Another thing that needs to be remembered is that this Nipun Bharat initiative and foundational literacy and numeracy terms, these are important terms which need to be remembered. Another thing that has been pointed out here is there is no doubt there has been a certain focus from the government on FLN. Also, there is greater acceptance of FLN now than before. But we still have to do well in terms of comparison to countries such as Sri Lanka. They are still way ahead. On the need to build on some of these gains, we need to take external assessment seriously. There's still a lot to be done in terms of support to teachers. FLN is not the only thing we need to do. Apart from that, we also need to focus on middle grades, board exam reforms, etc. What is ASER? ASER is a nationwide rural household survey conducted by the NGO Pratham. The latest survey, which comes after the smaller Beyond Basic survey of 2023, assessed 650,000 students approximately in 605 rural districts on basic reading levels and arithmetic. The report also shows that the government school enrollment, which saw a rise during the pandemic as children moved out of private schools, has almost returned to pre-pandemic levels. The percentage of 6 to 14-year-olds enrolled in government schools was 65% and rose to 73% and now has fallen to 66%. The overall school enrollment rate among 6 to 14-year-olds stood at 98%, close to the figure of 98% in 2022. It's almost the same. For the first time, ASER also included a section on digital literacy, that is access, ownership, and use of smartphones and basic digital skills among 14 to 16-year-olds. It found that more boys than girls report knowing how to use a smartphone, 85.5% boys compared to 80% girls. So these are all numbers, facts, which need to be remembered. Now I have a question from this particular topic, which let's discuss this question. Which of the following factors is primarily attributed to the improvement in learning levels as highlighted in the ASER 2024 report? First, increase in private school enrollment post-pandemic. No, this is not the primary factor. Second, implementation of the new education policy 2020 with a focus on foundational literacy and numeracy. Yes, this is the term which was mentioned. NEP and FLN, foundational literacy and numeracy. Third, reduction in student-teacher ratio in government schools. No, this is also not the case. And fourth, in fact, this is going to be concerning if the student-teacher ratio basically deteriorates. Last, introduction of a new nationwide standardized board examination system. This is also not the case. B is the right answer to this question. Now let's move to another article, which is from the Hindu newspaper. This article is basically talking about the budget pipeline in India's foreign policy ambitions. When the union budget is presented every year, most of the public attention centers on taxation, infrastructure, and defense. In this, however, the budget for India's Ministry of External Affairs deserves closer scrutiny. Last year, the MEA budget saw a rare 23% spike, up from the modest 4% annual increase between 2017 and 2023. Despite efficient budget utilization exceeding 96% of the revised estimates, the MEA remains one of the least funded ministries. Right? So this needs to be seen. The MEA's allocation not only reflects the government's foreign policy priorities, but also its capacity to deliver on its global ambitions and commitments. The vision of a Viksit Bharat by 2047 hinges on sustained global partnerships. Here, India is positioning itself as a global leader. We've always talked about ourselves as a global leader of the global South. From leading the global South, strengthening ties with the ASEAN, enhancing regional connectivity, engaging with the Quad, that is the grouping of India, US, Australia, and Japan, and creating institutions such as International Solar Alliance and Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Both these institutions, be it the ISA or CDRI, have their headquarters in India. Impact on plans. Partner countries also expect more from India, requiring a stronger Ministry of External Affairs. Countries anticipate timely project delivery, financial support, and diplomatic follow-through. Yet the MEA's current budget, that is just 0.4% of India's overall expenditure, falls short to deliver on these plans. In 2022, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs suggested raising this to 1% of the total budget. While such an increase seems unlikely, even a gradual increase to 0.6 or 0.8% would signal intent that the government wants to increase the budgetary allocations. Two areas demand greater budgetary resources to beef up India's diplomatic clout. First, economic tools for regional integration and cooperation. And second, the MEA's institutional capacity by expanding human resource and research expertise. These need to be seen. India's regional connectivity faced new challenges in 2024, including Bangladesh's regime change, Myanmar's instability, strained ties with Nepal, and Maldives' India Out campaign. These were major challenges in 2024. But visits by Sri Lanka's incoming president and Bhutan's prime ministers bolstered commitments in cross-border projects. Sustaining momentum under the neighborhood first policy requires economic support and China's growing influence. Amid China's growing influence, enhanced financial backing is crucial for advancing connectivity initiatives in South Asia. The article basically is trying to emphasize upon the fact that we've had challenges diplomatically in the neighborhood, and we need to ensure that India is resolutely facing these challenges. Now, what is the shift in foreign aids? Some data is there which needs to be remembered by you. Budgetary trends reveal nuanced shifts. India's aid to foreign countries declined by 10% in 2024-25, while loans to foreign governments increased by 29%. Approximately 50% of India's grants is directed to its neighborhood. Bhutan remains the largest recipient of Indian aid, reflecting historical ties and a new impetus on energy interdependence, including hydropower development and sub-regional grid connectivity. Aid to Bangladesh declined from rupees 2,200 crore to rupees 120 crore, while Sri Lanka saw a 63% increase in the budgetary allocation. A notable shift is the move from outright grants to line of credit, long-term loans, with 45% of line of credits directed to the neighborhood. Bangladesh being the largest recipient at $7.86 billion. Line of credit basically means long-term loans at very reasonable rates of interest. While LOCs enable sustainable infrastructure financing, they also demand robust disbursement and oversight mechanism, stretching India's diplomatic machinery. Another critical indicator is MEA resources to build institutional capacity. These are less visible but critical catalysts to enable long-term growth, including through a stronger Indian Foreign Service supported by an expert research ecosystem. While the MEA's training budget saw 30% increase in 24-25, overall capacity building allocations remain insufficient. The IFS remains a chronically understaffed diplomatic corps. Coordinating nation challenges, delayed expansion plans, and limited lateral entry efforts have hindered their progress. Last year, MEA's budget allocation for its foreign missions, training programs, and cultural diplomacy grew by only 7%, which is not a very sufficient number. But key academic institutions such as Nalanda University and South Asian University experienced cuts by 20 and 22% respectively. While the MEA has invested massively in conventional international conferences and dialogues to foster India's image as a bridge and augmenting power, it must also find more budgetary resources to support policy-relevant and evidence-based research at Indian universities and think tanks. There is also a need for declassification and digitization. Track 1, there are terms which are mentioned here. According to External Affairs Minister Sri S. Jaishankar, Track 1 has been consistently ahead of Track 2. Track 1 is interaction between heads of state. Track 2 is unofficial sort of interactions when it comes to diplomacy, foreign policy, and keeping up with the world. If this is the reality and needs change, as the minister beckoned, the MEA could lead by example by allocating specific resources in the next budget to accelerating the declassification and digitization of hundreds of thousands of its records. Public e-access will help scholars map India's rich diplomatic history, contest deeply held myths, and get a better grasp of the underappreciated context and constraints that regulate Track 1 decision making. And in turn, such Track 2 research may also help current MEA decision makers to learn from past successes and failures, thereby avoiding the reinventing of the wheel and articulating India's uniqueness based on the power of historical record rather than mere political proclamation. So this article basically is trying to talk about the fact that India needs to increase allocation to the Ministry of External Affairs, and this is going to help ensure a Viksit Bharat. So I have one question based on this article, which I wish to discuss. The budgetary allocation for the Ministry of External Affairs in India is crucial as it reflects the government's foreign policy priorities and its capacity to fulfill global commitments. However, despite efficient budget utilization, the MEA remains one of the least funded ministries. In this context, which of the following statements is correct? There are some facts which have been asked. You have to find out the correct answer. The MEA's budget was increased by 63% in the last fiscal year. This is wrong. India's aid to foreign countries declined by 10%. Yes, this is correct. While loans to foreign governments increased by 29%. This is absolutely correct. The neighborhood first policy is being phased out due to China's growing influence. No, this is not at all the case. India has completely shifted from grants to lines of credit for foreign assistance. India has not completely shifted from grants to lines of credit. Grants have reduced and lines of credit have increased though. That is correct. B is the right answer to this particular question. So this is it from today's articles from the Daily News Digest session. I hope this was a fruitful session for all of you. Thank you so much. We'll meet again.